Will Smith was mourning, but this time it wasn't just a personal heartbreak. It was a loss that echoed through generations. The world was shaken by the unexpected death of Ananda Lewis, a name that once lit up television screens and inspired a generation with her voice, her fire, and her authenticity. For many, she had quietly faded from the spotlight until the headlines brought her name back with devastating force. Her passing didn't just spark memories, it triggered deep reflection, especially for Will, who shared a history with her that ran deeper than the cameras ever showed. What unfolded next wasn't just a tribute, it was a raw, emotional reckoning with grief, legacy, and the painful fragility of time. You won't believe how quietly it all unfolded. Ananda Lewis, once the unapologetically bold voice of MTV, the woman who fearlessly owned every camera she stood in front of, had been silently battling breast cancer for years. Not even her closest friends knew, not even Will Smith, and that's where the heartbreak begins. When the news broke, it wasn't just a tragedy, it was a shockwave. A woman so full of life, who had inspired millions with her courage and authenticity, had been fighting a brutal war behind closed doors, alone. But it was Will Smith's reaction that left everyone stunned. The man known for his confidence, his poise, and his strength, broke. In his tearful tribute, he could barely speak. This wasn't just a celebrity paying respects. This was raw, gut-wrenching grief, the kind that comes from losing someone who saw the real you. Ananda wasn't just another face from the past. She was a force, a sister, a friend. And as Will revealed stories of their bond, their history, and her hidden strength, it became clear. Ananda's story didn't end when the cameras stopped rolling. In fact, the most powerful chapter of her life, the quiet one, had only just been told. Ananda's cancellation was not made. She remained relevant. She decided to go. She left during the prime of her career, and many individuals were perplexed by such choice. Now that she's gone, that decision makes more sense, agonizingly so. Away from the lights and noise, she had quietly begun a new life. She prioritized her roles as a mother, an activist, and most people are unaware, a patient. For over 2 years, she concealed the fact that she had stage 3 breast cancer. Why? There is no easy answer to such question. It is said that she didn't want sympathy. She didn't want to be treated differently, according to others. However, destiny took a surprising turn. Furthermore, it was already late in 2020 that she eventually disclosed her condition. The illness had spread. Her sole motivation for going public was to urge other women, particularly Black women, to get examined as soon as possible. She said, "I have a son," while crying, "I must be present for him." The courageous host suddenly found herself battling for her life. The most bizarre aspect is that Ananda continued to keep a lot of her suffering private even after going public. She didn't provide updates frequently. She made no attempt to attract attention. She advocated for awareness, not pity, using her position. Fans and friends were left in the dark about her status in the interim. Then all of a sudden she was gone. As simple as that. There were no warnings, no drawn-out farewells, just a silent goodbye. However, this is when things become emotional and unclear. Her family didn't even issue a formal statement until after Will Smith's homage. People began to inquire. Will spoke up so early, but why? Why wasn't the cause of death disclosed right away? She reportedly passed away at home. She died in a private care facility, according to others. Conspiracy theories began to circulate online when the timetable didn't add up. Did someone want to conceal something, or was it just to preserve her final desires? One thing is certain, but nobody knows for sure. Will Smith was grieving for more than simply a friend. He was grieving the loss of a family member. Celebrity life wasn't the only thing that united them. They had had in-depth discussions, exchanged life stories, and quietly understood what it meant to turn down stardom. And nobody was prepared to hear what Will had to say when he eventually talked about their last discussion. People had been curious about Ananda Lewis's whereabouts for years. Because of how discreetly she had vanished, many people believed she had just moved away to lead a private life. Some believed she had retired to spend more time with her family. The truth was far more serious than anyone had anticipated, but others thought she was working in the background. Choosing to struggle in quiet, Ananda had been struggling for her life. She eventually opened up in a moving video back in 2020, revealing that she has been coping with stage 3 breast cancer for almost 2 years. With her eyes fixed on the camera, she stated, "I'm sharing this now because I have a son and I want to live. but also because too many women wait too long. Her voice broke. Her eyes were strong but exhausted. Something more was generated by that one video. It was more than her sickness. It turned into a warning, a wake-up call, particularly for Black women, who frequently receive inadequate treatment and late diagnoses. This is the part, though, that nobody anticipated. She spoke her truth, yet she continued to keep the most difficult portions to herself. She never discussed the late-night anxieties, the agony, or the remedies. She continued to promote her message and smile in public, but she was becoming weaker behind closed doors. Few people were aware of its true severity, and one of them wasn't Will Smith, not until the very end. It may surprise you to learn that the pivotal occasion occurred just 2 weeks before to her death. Ananda contacted Jada Pinkett Smith to provide directions rather than to bid her farewell. "Don't let them tell my story wrong," she urged. That one line was quite powerful. Even as her time was running out, it demonstrated how much control Ananda still desired over her own story and made Jada realize how much she had been holding in. This is where it becomes even more sentimental, though. Following that call, Jada lost it. She appeared devastated in a video she uploaded shortly after Ananda's death. Trembling voice, red eyes. "Ananda was more than just a friend," she claimed. "She served as my reflection. She reminded me that it's acceptable to leave and to put peace above recognition." Then she contributed something unexpected to everyone's attention. "Will taking it the hardest," she remarked. Nobody anticipated that, not from Will, the guy who had endured the adversities of fame and the condemnation of the world while maintaining a grin. In reality, though, Will was crumbling beneath that grin. Will Smith sat next to Ananda in her last hours in a calm hospital room, away from the cameras and the commotion. And initially, he didn't speak much. According to family members, all he did was hold her hand. He glanced at her before whispering something that, despite the anguish, made her grin. "You were always the realest of us," he stated. "You walked away when they needed you the most, and somehow that's when you were the strongest." Her face was streaming with tears, and she used her last strength to stop him when he kissed her forehead and got up to go. "Don't carry this," she urged. "Let me leave in peace." He was broken by that one line. Will sobbed like a child as he fell into Jada's arms. This wasn't merely a farewell. This was the sudden collapse of years of friendship, affection, and tacit understanding. However, even those closest to him were taken aback by what transpired next. Because Will left that hospital and made a phone call that would alter everything, rather than vanishing into sorrow. Not all he wanted to do was lament Ananda. He wished to pay tribute to her. "We need to do a project about her," he remarked over the phone to his longtime producing partner. "Unvarnished, unadulterated, and authentic. Her true identity must be revealed to the world." Will's choice to share Ananda's tale was more than just a sentimental one. He made it his mission. He isolated himself from the public and began making calls, not the kind of calls celebrities make for public relations hours after leaving the hospital. Still in shock over her last words, these were urgent, unvarnished discussions. "This isn't just a tribute," he said to his crew. "She is telling the truth. We have an obligation to her to do it correctly." In an instant, a silent pledge became a major undertaking. Here's the startling bit, though. Something unexpected occurred as the team started getting ready to collect information for the documentary. Her relatives discovered a tiny, sealed package hidden inside a jewelry box while sorting through Ananda's belongings. It read for Will in her handwriting on the front. "When the moment is right." There was only one flash disk inside. Will brought it home. He waited for several hours before watching it, according to someone close to him. He sat by himself in a pitch-black room, pressed play, and for the next 13 minutes, nothing happened. Ananda was shown on the video sitting in her sunroom, wearing a nice scarf and spoke in a clear, quiet voice. "If you're seeing this, then I'm already gone," she remarked, staring directly into the camera. "Don't be depressed, though. I survived. I did indeed live. I want my life to speak now." What came next was more than a simple farewell, I assure you. It was an admission. Her essence was captured on film. She talked about Will and how he had been there in the quiet, difficult moments that the world was not privy to, as well as in the bright ones. She said, "You always told me my voice mattered, even when I didn't want to speak." Then she revealed the most absurd detail. For more than 5 years, Ananda had been discreetly documenting her trip. Just her phone, and the unvarnished truth. No directors, no crew. She kept a record of everything. There were the good days, the terrible nights, the times she felt powerful, and the times she wanted to give up. Up until today, she had no intention of showing the world, and she let Will handle everything. If you think someone needs this, if you think it matters, then use it, she continued. Her legacy evolved in this way. Will didn't think twice. This is the crux of it, he added, calling his producers once more. Her words, her reality. We're not paying homage, we will allow her to speak. And more details started to come up while they were putting the story together. Ananda sent Jada voice notes, which she brought forward, late-night thoughts, private communications, and even some disagreements about whether Ananda ought to go public sooner. With each clip, her true self was shown in greater detail, kind, fearful, obstinate, fierce, and optimistic. However, what distinguishes this tale? It's not only about fame or sickness. It tells the story of a lady who had every motive to pursue stardom, but instead decided to pursue her mission. When her career was just getting started, she stopped going to red carpet events. She put parenting before fame. She declined pity in favor of seclusion. She ultimately opted for truth over comfort. This is when things start to get interesting. Fans started researching Ananda's death timeline just as the media began to learn about the impending endeavor. There were also minor discrepancies. Days after her death actually occurred, it was publicized. She died at home, according to some sources. In a private care facility, according to others. It took a whole 48 hours before the cause of death was revealed. A barrage of inquiries resulted from this delay. Was there a deeper issue at play, or was her family attempting to safeguard her last days? Theories of conspiracy began to circulate. People started to inquire, did she decline medical care? Did those closest to her experience conflict? Although nothing was established, there were enough ambiguities in the hush following her death to raise questions. Jada and Will's inner group, however, believed that the reality was straightforward. Ananda didn't want her death to be witnessed by everyone. When she was gone, she wanted the world to hear her. While condolences came in and Hollywood began to respond in the days following Ananda's passing, something more significant started to take place. Will Smith, who had previously exuded charm and confidence while walking the red carpet and at award events, suddenly appeared in front of cameras as a guy who had undergone a permanent transformation rather than as a superstar. He wasn't a movie promoter, he was advocating for a cause. He made a brief yet impactful public statement. I won't convey her story incorrectly because she begged me not to. As with her last communication, something was triggered by that words. Fans, health advocates, and celebrities were no longer merely expressing their sympathies. They were exchanging health advice, appointment dates, and mammography findings. Something had started to move. Even death couldn't extinguish the fire that Ananda had quietly started. However, here's the unexpected part. Something was found among Ananda's possessions while Will and her family continued to work on the documentary. She even created voice recordings for her son, as well as handwritten letters and journals. Dozens of them. Some of them go all the way back to the moment she was diagnosed. Layers of everything she had left behind. She had a feeling that someone would eventually have to connect the dots. The most insane part is about to happen. Will was deeply shaken by what she wrote in one of her last journal entries. Don't just tell them how I died, it said. Tell them about my life, my laughter, my struggles, and how I vanished and yet felt complete. Inform them that I won. On my terms, I departed. Everything altered as a result. Initially intended to be an homage, the documentary evolved into something more. It was more than a fallen media celebrity or breast cancer. It evolved into a manual on how to live authentically, even when society demands that you do otherwise. How to leave celebrity in a position of strength rather than weakness. How to confront death fearlessly. For millions, Ananda's narrative served as a mirror. However, the editing process was the most emotionally taxing of all. Do you recall that flash drive? In the final moments of the film, Ananda went solemn, almost mumbling, and addressed the camera directly. Tell my son that I adored him unconditionally. Then she added to the group of young black girls who watched me and thought, maybe I can do that too, while looking directly into the lens and fighting back tears. You can indeed. You can still do it. Will was utterly broken at that very moment. According to insiders, he put the editing on hold for 3 days. He was unable to talk or sleep. She didn't just leave a story, he claimed upon his eventual return to the studio. She left a legacy, a map, and instructions. This is where things start to get sentimental once more. Let Her Voice Speak. The official title of the documentary is nearing completion. Furthermore, it is already altering lives. Hospitals, community centers, and schools are planning screenings. In Ananda's honor, a foundation is being established to promote health education for women of color. And Will is the guardian of her truth, not just a producer. If you have read this narrative through to the conclusion, keep this in mind. You saw the emergence of a legacy rather than merely hearing about a death. There was no decline in Ananda Lewis. She made a road bright. As she requested, her narrative is being recounted in a way that is accurate, impactful, and precisely how she desired. Even while saying farewell, they are the most genuine of all.